The podcast that floats down here.
Hello, and welcome back to the podcast that floats down here. I'm your host for the evening, Melissa. Tonight I am joined, as always, by Ben.
Howdy.
And Luke.
Hello, everybody.
And we are here discussing Part 3, Grown-Ups, Chapter 11, Walking Tours. And today we are just discussing Section 1, Ben Hanscom Makes a Withdrawal. This section is 15 pages and is 1.38% of the book, because this whole chapter was 74 pages, which is 6.79% of the book. So we're just doing these first 15 pages. Benji, tell us what happened.
After sharing a quiet ride with Richie from a religious cabbie, Dave, Ben ends up at the Derry Public Library, his favorite childhood haunt. After a brief exploration, he hears a reading of The Three Billy Goats Grow Up, the same exact story he heard on the last day of school in 1958. But the lack of bra the reader had confirmed he was still in 1985. When she confronted him about what he was doing in the children's section, he tells her he's looking for his son, who surprisingly looks a lot like he did at 11 years old. Ben meets the librarian assistant and asks if he could get a library card as a souvenir to remember his time being home. While she looks up his old information, Ben is startled by the loud shouting of none other than Pennywise the Dancing Clown. After some taunting and bad dad jokes, do you have Prince Albert in a can? You do? Well, you better let him out. Yuck. 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 Pennywise warns Ben to get out now, or will die tonight, and then turns into a gruesome vampire. That is when Ben remembers they turned the silver dollars into slugs, and that's how they beat him last time. Pennywise laughs off the idea of the group killing him this time and leaves. But leaves a little present behind for him, a balloon with "I killed Barbara" written across it. Ben sweating as he unknowingly checks out a book so he could quickly leave the library. Outside, he realizes the book he had checked out was Bulldozer, the same book he had withdrawn the day Henry Bowers chased him into the Barrens. It even had his old signature at the last name to check it out, along with one other word stamped over and over on it in dark red coloring. Cancel.
All right. Luke, let's start off with you. What did you think about our chapter here with good old Ben?
So, this was interesting. The first thing that really stood out to me this chapter was Ben noticing the turtle, and the line reads, "He looked down at the sidewalk and for a moment saw the shape of a turtle chalked there, and the world seemed to swim before his eyes. He shut them tightly. When he opened them, he saw it was not a turtle, only a hopscotch grid half erased by light rain." And then it also has the 4 letters chud or chewed with an umlaut over the top kind of written there as well. So that was the first thing that definitely caught my attention on, shit's kind of starting right away for him, right? Something... It is absolutely watching Ben. It knows that Ben is looking for it, and it's just nice to, well, not nice to see, but it's interesting to see that he's already tracking you, bud. The other thing with Ben that I thought was really interesting was how he feels like he calls himself, he feels like a spy, an interloper in the library, and also just kind of in the town. And I definitely kind of get where he's coming from. Like, if you go back to a place you used to spend a lot of time and you haven't been there in a long time, it's like you know everything, but it's different and you don't necessarily fit there anymore like you used to. And there could be something more than that, for Ben and the losers specifically in this case, but it was just a cool way for him to kind of describe how he felt walking around in his old haunts.
Well, and I think one of the moments that stood out for me that kind of goes along with that whole being an interloper and not belonging, was when he was in the children's library and the little assistant girl was questioning him very politely, but like in the way of, who are you? Why are you here?
Mhm.
Right? And he didn't get it. He realized she was questioning him and she was very nice, but it wasn't until, toward the end of the conversation, he was like, oh, and it was this line, and it was, Ben suddenly realized that she hadn't come over and spoken to him out of simple politeness and a wish to help. She happened to be a library assistant in the children's library in a town where 9 children had been slain over a span of 8 months. You see a strange man in a scaled-down world where adults rarely come except to drop their kids off or pick them up. You're suspicious. Of course. Because up until that moment, I don't think he thought of himself as an adult. He was just Ben.
Just Ben.
But now he's the grown-up.
Exactly. And my note for that scene in particular, Melissa, I had the concern as described by the teenage helper. It makes me wonder, was she actually concerned because of the murderers and all that? Or is it possible that she just doing what she's supposed to, asking about it and just kind of brushing it off, kind of like the rest of the adults always seem to do?
No, I think if your job is to protect children and that, like, the children are being taken, my guess is it was definitely maybe not so much that there was 9 kids who've been taken, but I would say just in general, strange guy, especially a guy. Like, I highly doubt that if Beverly had been the person there, it would have been nearly as suspicious. But I think it's like a man by himself in a little kid world, not with anybody else. In general, that arouses suspicion, regardless, like even without the 9 dead kids and Derry being like Derry. But I think in general, that would definitely be something that would raise my awareness because of what I do.
Even with the conversation that he has with the library assistant, there's a good chance she probably still doesn't believe him because she knows all the kids and she knows there's no Ben Hanscom.
Right.
Like, and that's supposed to be his son. Like, yeah, it's still pretty fishy.
Yeah, and then if she runs that past Carol Danner later in the day, well, yeah, Ben Hanscom just got a library card. You think they might actually talk to each other at some point?
I don't know. You think the children's librarians talk to the grown-up people's librarians? I always wondered that. You go to my library, they're in 2 completely different parts. It's kind of weird. So, to lighten the mood just a bit, let's talk about Dave. Let's talk about Dave. Are we good with that?
Yeah.
What happened to poor Dave?
He went to church.
You think? But he's not a religious man. I
know.
thought it was really interesting. That was Ben and Richie in the cab, and it was Bill's religious guy, cab driver. But I wonder what happened to him, because it said he's not nearly as fun, and the text describes him and describes his silence as morose. Not even that he's just not talkative, it's that he's now like almost a 180 on personality. What'd that dude go through while those guys were having the craziest fortune cookie experience ever?
My other thought is, because it doesn't talk about if Ben and Richie actually had a conversation, but if they did, Richie never shuts up. So Dave might not have ever gotten a chance to say anything.
This is true. Or he may not have liked Richie.
Yeah.
Because I'm sure Richie rubbed some people the wrong... Okay, so blame Richie?
Yeah, that's my call with it.
That sounds good. I was just hoping he didn't have some sort of, like, conversation with Derry at large where they're like, you need to stop being nice to the outsiders or something. But I don't know.
So my note on it, on this next part, or on the same scene, it's this line. It occurred to him that kids were better at almost dying, and they were also better at incorporating the inexplicable into their lives. They believed implicitly in the invisible world. Miracles both bright and dark were to be taken into consideration. Oh yes, most certainly. But they by no means stopped the world. A sudden upheaval of beauty or terror at 10 did not preclude an extra cheese dog or 2 for lunch at noon. He's absolutely right. Kids are indestructible until they're not, kind of thing. And as adults, you start to realize, it usually hits around 18 to 25 where you realize, crap, I actually might, not want to ride my bike at full breakneck speed down this hill or, whatever. But at 10, 11 years old, nothing stopped me.
Well, and I think as adults, we also we try to rationalize everything. We have to find the real explanation for it, whereas kids just implicitly believe things.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, think about all the things kids believe. They believe in the tooth fairy, and they believe in the monster under their bed, and they believe that all kinds of crazy things. So, of course, it makes sense to believe that there's a mummy who's chasing me, whereas an adult's like, okay, dude, that's like a movie monster, so is it really just a guy? Like, what is it? So I like that Ben's realizing that, and he's trying to sort of fight against it. Like, okay, I know that's what it is, but how do I really combat that?
Exactly.
Let's talk about visiting the library. So does anybody have any thoughts on Ben outside the library?
Nothing particular. You know, he does kind of expand on the walkway that, you know, he used for his design and everything, and how he used to hang out around in there in the summer or in the winter time because it stayed warm. You know, thought that was pretty interesting, pretty neat.
I just like the idea of him standing there and the juxtaposition of the, you know, the inside and the outside. And even just that the way it was written of, I would do this like I'm doing now. And then I would do this like I was doing now. And I'm going to look back like I'm doing now. So that idea of deja vu, but in that moment, it was a good one before he got inside.
Yeah, the way he is constantly almost questioning what year it is that goes along with that was really interesting. Like, because he's like, I know it's 1985. I know that, but it's just like constantly, like you said, it's almost like this muscle memory that he's going through because this is what he did before, and it just feels natural. But is that the only thing at play? Like, the fact that he's realizing it almost feels like overly to muscle memory, I think makes him question it a bit. And I think we kind of have figured out where that ends up for him this chapter, but...
Yeah, and going into that, like, my note is muscle memory to look up under the stairs, and he even did it as an adult. Just, why am I doing that? Oh, yeah. And you think back to that first time. I'm guilty of it, you know.
Gross.
Not that, but old habits like that.
Okay. All right.
That's what I'm saying. Old habits like that, where it's like, why do I... Oh, yeah. Okay. Mm-hmm. That makes sense.
Yeah, let me just point out, I was really glad he was like, wait, hold on. I know I did that, but, like, I shouldn't have done that. So...
Yeah.
A little bit of like, thank you for respecting the girls walking up the damn stairs, but you know, whatever. I had like a little bump as like a feminist going, what the hell is wrong with you? Okay, hold on. It's a book and it was written 30 years ago and you gotta let it go. I'm like, okay. Talking about the deja vu, I really liked the image of the past and present being stapled together. That was a metaphor that Stephen King said that I thought was a really good way to describe this whole chapter. That it was that the past was being stapled and that they were coming together in a way that he couldn't really tell one from the other. So the line says, I had to talk to someone, he thought, panicked. Mike, Bill, someone. Is something really stapling the past and present together here, or am I only imagining it? Because if I'm not sure I bargained for this much. And then he stops and he looks up. And once again, there's a sign that says, remember the curfew. 7 p.m. And then he realized that, yeah, it's the same path, and it was set, and this is what it is, and it's an echo after an echo of an echo, and it's just going to keep going unless they do something about it.
You know, playing into that is the Billy Goat Scrim. It's the,
right.
You know, and I love how he's like, the only way I could tell was because of her of what she wasn't wearing, and that's how I know it's 1985 and not 1958.
Right.
That never would have happened back then. But yeah, like you said, the echoes and the reverberations coming through where he's just like, wait a second. And then at the very end, the book that he walks out with. You know?
Right. It was his book.
It was his book, the one that was dropped in the Barrens. He was the last one to check it out, and it still had Bowers' footprint on it.
And I think the moment that got me after that was not like all of those things. And then he looked at the card with his name on it, and his name had stamped canceled. Now, could that have been the library stamping canceled? Or was that Pennywise?
What's that? It was like stamped like a bunch of times, wasn't it?
Yeah, like
it was like
over and
excessive,
over
which makes me think it.
Yeah.
That's what I always assumed it was. But then as I read it again, I'm like, okay, wait, have I read that wrong this whole time? But that's just me.
Yeah, it feels like the photograph of Georgie that came back out in chapter 9, right, where they were talking about, or I guess that was chapter 10, right? That was in the reunion discussion.
Right. So, Luke, I see you've got a note here about the vote they were going to take that they took in Chapter 10, speaking of Chapter 10.
Yeah, so right after he looks up and sees, the poster of, remember the curfew, 7 p.m., Derry Police Department, and he has more and more of this deja vu feeling, he says, it goes in his internal monologue. In that instant, it all seemed to come clear to him. It came in a grisly flash of light, and he realized that the vote they had taken was a joke. There was no turning back, never had been. They were on a track as preordained as the memory track which had caused him to look up when he passed under the stairway leading to the stacks. I just feel like that really wraps up almost this whole experience that he's going through. All of this is set on this preordained path, like he says, and hopefully they can kind of take control of where it's leading them enough to make a difference, which is what I think they were able to do previously. They see these things, because every time we've seen it's like the character or the potential victim is like on casters, just like being like thrust in the direction that it wants them to go. It wants them to be backed into a secluded area. It wants them to be with Mike and Rodan, like go into the places that he doesn't want to go. He's like, oh, I shouldn't go in there. Guess what? I'm going in there. Happens over and over and over. And I think somehow this group of losers, with the help of each other, previously in 1958, were able to take control of that and at least do just enough to at least save their own lives and potentially others at the time. And Ben is starting to remember things throughout this section as well. And it's just, I just think it's just a cool way of doing it, just literary wise. It's neat.
Okay, I just had a random thought, and stop me if I sound dumb. It feels like that Derry, or this force in Derry, is like a wild bull, going with my cowboy Ben theme. And that for the first time ever, these losers have been able to together put enough of a rein on the bull to control it a little bit. Not necessarily to get it to stop, but have at least redirected it out of the way to keep from harming as many others as they could.
I could buy on that. Yeah, I see where you're going with it. It feels like there's a wild, uncontrollable force that somehow they're maneuvering back, which is normally like a driving force for all of these things that are happening, and somehow they fought back in such a way that takes the reins back a little bit.
Maybe something along those lines, ish.
Yeah, no, I get that feeling for sure.
Let's talk about Ben and his library card.
I mean, it makes sense. He wants kind of a memory, a souvenir. That was the only other time he was happy, was when he had that library card, when he was at the library, except for hanging out with losers. So it's kind of the happy memory to fight the Dementor kind of thing, in other terms. It's just something to kind of bring him back to reality.
Now, Luke, what do you think about the library card thing?
I don't know if there's supposed to be anything more to it. I thought it was neat just for a nostalgic, reason. That was one of the main things that we learned about him in his younger Ben chapter, is he spent a lot of time in the library. So it is nice to have something to hold on to. And I wonder, say he gets through all of this, and they don't necessarily, it's a lot like the end of 1958, which again, I don't know what that's like, but clearly it wasn't really eradicated, like they thought it had. Would that new library card like disappear over time? Like if he survived and they thought they defeated it and they lose all their memories again, like if we go through this whole cycle again, would his new library card like disappear, or would that create a tether for him to help remember, kind of like Mike has been able to since he stayed so close?
That's a really good theory that I've never thought of before. Interesting. See, I went a whole different way with the library card thing. I really thought he asked for a library card as a total excuse for not being the creepy guy hanging out in the library. To me, it didn't feel like, I want nostalgia. It was, I gotta come up with something to justify why I'm here because I seem crazy.
Mm-hmm.
That's how I took it, but I like your guys' take a little better.
I mean, honestly, I think you're right.
Yeah, and one other thing is it gave him a reason to talk to the pretty librarian, because he even says when he walks in, she was very attractive, and her smile made her go from attractive to downright beautiful. So that gave him a reason to actually have a conversation with her.
I don't know if he's definitely attracted to her, but I don't think he was trying to make anything out of it other than, yeah, I don't want to be thrown out of here because I have a job to do and I have to be here. And it's potentially #problematic looking why, as to why I'm actually here. And he can't tell anyone, hey, I'm here looking for a crazy goddamn clown that's probably going to try to kill me. No one's going to want to hear that, especially in this crazy town. Speaking of that, if we don't have any more on the library card, right along with that, the guy who was reading the paper and basically calls him out when he has his comment about the silver slugs, that they, I guess, boiled these things down, these silver coins, and created basically shotgun slugs or something along those lines. And the guy's like, oh yeah, you can't make bullets out of them. He's like, well, I didn't say bullets, you jackass. Like,
they tumble,
it's all about the specific gravity. It's like, get out of here. Like, who are you? Somebody that clearly knew something is what I took from it. He reminded me of one of those old timers that doesn't want to talk about it, knows these things, knows enough, but doesn't want to open those doors yet. There are keys and there are doors. All you have to do is put them together. I think this guy has been one of those guys, and that's why he overhears Ben and kind of chimes in.
So can we talk about Pennywise?
So I just want to start with my first comment with Pennywise, and then you two can go to town. My thought is this. Pennywise in the library proves that nowhere in Derry is safe.
No, that's very valid. My note with it, two of them. First was Pennywise with the dad jokes. Do you have Prince Albert in a can? You do? Well, you might as well let him out. Let the poor guy out. Ma'am, is your refrigerator running? It is. Well, you better go catch it.
Yeah.
That scene right there is the iconic from the miniseries. Tim Curry doing those lines. I know, Luke, you're an audiobook person. The guy who does the audiobook mimics Tim Curry's pattern and everything real well on that. Those are ones that always stick out to me as those lines, just because it's yuck. Just wanted to get that in there.
So the way his face paint is described, the red lipstick, it says his mouth bled lipstick in a killer's grin, and his eye sockets were empty. Like, this is like a mutilated version of the clown almost too. Like, this is kind of combining a few different things to really not just sell the point of, hey, I'm the clown, but I'm in your face. Like, I'm trying to boggart up for you a bit. I don't know, it's just real creepy. And we know that it goes, Ben tried to open his mouth to call back, you're insane if you think I'm going up there. And then suddenly he realized that if he did that, everyone here would be looking at him. Everyone here would be thinking, who is that crazy man? And Pennywise calls back, oh, I know you can't answer. Pennywise called down and giggled. Almost fooled you there for a minute, though, didn't I? Pardon me, sir. Do you have Prince Albert in a can? Goes into that. But basically just, he knows, he hears the internal monologue thoughts that Ben is having. He's talking to. They're having a conversation. And like, that's creepy, man.
He can hear his thoughts.
Yeah, he's basically responding to, I want to call out, but everyone's going to think I'm crazy. And Pennywise is like, oh, I know you can't answer. Like, and he's just completely directly responding to him.
Well, that was, with it. It was a couple of points. So the first thing is, thinking of Pennywise as a boggart, Harry Potter reference, we've always said that Pennywise pulls the scary out of the brain, right? The forefront of the brain. So back when it was Richie had just seen the werewolf movie. Richie sees it. Bam, werewolf. And then even with the fortune cookies in the last chapter, the different fortune cookie monsters came from something specific that had just happened to them, taking those, random adult annoyances and turning them into something fearful. This time, he not only does that, because I think they're all kind of nervous about seeing the clown, but he ramps it up to make it a scary for adults clown, not the Ronald McDonald type that is going to just freak out a kid. But then he takes that same skill and turns it into conversation. He gets everywhere. He's everywhere. He's inside them and outside them. But is it just the periphery thoughts he can handle that he can grasp, that, you know, like the Legilimens where he can just get like the stuff right in the front, or is it deep core memory type thoughts?
I feel like it's deeper than that, because there are times where he pulls references that the characters don't even realize that they're thinking. Like, they're not actively thinking about them necessarily. And even in this chapter, I'm going to go ahead and just read it from here again, but this is your one chance, Haystack, the voice called from behind and above him. Get out of town. Get out of town before it gets dark tonight. I'll be after you tonight, you and the others. You're too old to stop me, Ben. You're all too old. Too old to do anything but get yourselves killed. Get out, Ben. Do you want to see this tonight?
And then right after that scene, that's when he turns into a vampire. Which, why would Ben technically be scared of a vampire? He hasn't seen, I mean, he probably has seen a movie. He's seen the movies and he's, all that. So that goes to the deeper, darker recesses of his brain or of his thought pattern, because he didn't realize he was scared of that. But seeing that, yeah, that's creepy.
What was Ben's reunion fortune cookie one?
I don't think Ben's opened.
Ben had the bloody teeth.
Right. So that I was like, I wonder if there's something to do with the teeth, because the teeth of the vampire are described as being blue blade Gillette razor blades. So there's something going on with the mouth that is eating, for lack of a better term, at Ben. And so that's where I went, because I thought it was the teeth, but I wanted to make sure. But something about teeth or mouths is chewing away at Ben.
I just am questioning Pennywise at the moment, though. Go with me. I promise, it's not crazy.
Okay.
Chapter ago, we found out he has been upping his game in an effort to drag these people back into town, right?
Mm-hmm.
Come home, come home, come home, come home, come home. And here he's saying, get out.
Get out.
Get out,
It's
get
your
out,
one
get
chance.
out, get out. What is the point of that? I mean, like, he doesn't really want them to get out. He really, really, really wants them here because he really, really, really wants to kill them, I think. Or is he like, I want to kill them, but now that they're back, I want them to leave because they could maybe hurt me like they did. Who knows?
I think it's meant to throw him off balance. Like, okay. if he can somehow distract him just enough and make them second guess things when they do meet back up later, which I think we're guaranteed that that's going to happen. that Ben's going to run into, if he can, because he knows Ben's strong suit is his brain, right? I feel like Pennywise definitely knows that.
Yeah.
And if he can get him to second guess and throw him off his game and keep him off balance, then that's, it's an extra bullet in the chamber for Pennywise.
Or do you think it's maybe if I get Ben out of town, if I get even one more gone, then they're less likely to hurt me as a group if the group is smaller. If,
Potentially, too, yeah. I don't know.
Yeah. And that's pretty valid. I have a note on it. It's on the balloon after Pennywise left. It says, I killed Barbara Starrett. And my question, kind of along with yours, are you trying to encourage him to stay, or are you trying to get him to run? You're trying to piss him off. So I think, like Luke says, yeah, he's playing both sides, just trying to keep him off balance of, he doesn't want them to know he's scared of them, but at the same time, he wants their fear, because that's what he feeds on. So it's kind of one of that weird double-edged sword that he's trying to play. Did anybody else notice the shower of blood that no one else noticed in the library? Just dripping on the guy reading Newsweek and
absolutely.
All that.
Yeah,
that was a nice moment of visiting the past, right? Jeez.
Yeah, this whole thing, just again with like the certain people can see the blood, or the clown, or like Beverly's blood in the sink and all of that. And like even with the fortune cookies, like when the Chinese hostess or server comes in and she can't see these creatures on the table, it's just like what the fuck? It's like, how is no one seeing this? And even when they can see each other's monsters, and that's where it is even more confusing. It's not like just an internal eye thing. It really is only certain people can see this. So, like, what's the benefit? Like, why does Pennywise do that? Because it keeps enough people around that it kind of diminishes the attention that it would get, I guess? Because he can clearly control who sees what.
Because if everybody saw it raining blood in the Derry library, no one would stick around to Derry. So he specifically picks who he wants to see his tricks because, again, he wants their fear. They're the ones he wants to feed on, so... You got
to do just enough without doing too much. Pennywise is Goldilocks, right?
Yeah. Well, if you do things right, people won't be sure you've done anything at all.
Any other thoughts before we move on to the next section?
Ben was sweating his ass off.
Right.
Like, disturbingly a lot, right? Like, that. It seems like there was...
pass out and have a heart attack.
Right, because even the librarian, was it Carol, was like, I know it's really impolite to say, but you look terrible. Like, and even the other guy that chimed in about the bullets, he was like, yeah, you might want to help your buddy out there. He's not looking too good. So, like, it's pretty evident that something is affecting Ben here, and this is just really not playing well into the who is this crazy guy potentially in our library with these kids around. Like, it's not good for him.
And I also felt a little bad for Ben because I'm looking for the line now where he says, if she asks me if I'm okay one more time, I'm really going to cry.
Mm-hmm.
Because
it was after he found out that
freaked out.
Well, it was also because he was talking about the old librarian too, right? And that's when he found out that she was dead, and I think he did kind of have some strong emotional reaction to that, more than he thought he was going to as well.
And a bit of like a panic attack in that moment because, monster guy after me at the same time.
Right.
Let's move on to the section called Questions for the New Reader. I have one. Are you ready, new reader?
Sure.
What does chewed mean? Or chud, or whatever you want to call it.
I have no idea. Other than I know the chapter titles of this book. That's it, though. I know there's a reference later to a ritual of chud, I believe, but I have no idea what that is. It's clearly something that Ben recognizes, and it kind of starts off his disturbed feeling that carries through this whole section. I don't know what it specifically could be, though, at all.
I do have a note to that, Melissa, because I forgot that chud was mentioned in this chapter or in this section, and so I went back to find it. You know how impossible it is to search that on Kindle because I don't have the umlauts button or whatever?
It doesn't pull up?
If you type CHUD, it will not. You have to have the symbol above the U.
And so
sorry. It's all right. I'm like, damn it. Couldn't figure out where in the chapter it was.
I have to search manually for this?
Yeah, that's
so 2012.
And it's such a short
word,
too.
I just tried it. It doesn't work. You have to have the umlaut in there.
So now we get to the section we used to call Questions from the New Reader, but I today am calling Questions, Suggestions, and Speculations by the New Reader. Got any?
Sure. The silver slugs. I think that was one that kind of gave me some information about what was going on with the silver coins and we've kind of talked about, I think before, like the silver bullet reference. Werewolves, you shoot them with a silver bullet, and that's kind of how you can take them out. And we've seen werewolves, and it's like I think that was like quickly my first thought of they weaponize these things somehow, and the fact that it's silver. There's like so many old stories that silver is like symbolic of purity, and that's the thing that you can use to help you kill evil creatures, silver arrows. I mean, there's all sorts of references out there. So I've always thought that they were going to weaponize them. I feel like calling it a slug makes me think of, like I said, a shotgun shell, a shotgun slug. And we know that they have access to some weaponry like that. They've had handguns already, so I feel like they could manufacture something fairly simply to put into a shot, like musket style shotgun, basically. Other than that, the fact that Ben is realizing how on rails his storyline is disturbing. Because I don't know, like when it's self-evident that things are just not looking good for you, it's hard to, when you start questioning that free will involved, that's where I think their strength is as a group, they can regain their free will, but individually, Pennywise does pull the strings. And so that's why I think they have to be together as a group. Yeah, they're getting information, they're doing reconnaissance right now to kind of outright prove that, yeah, Mike was right, we had to come back, this is exactly what's going on. But once, hopefully, they all return from these walks, I don't know if everyone's going to survive. I have only read this one and the next two, so I haven't read the final 3 of this chapter. So I hope they all survive. But when they finally return together, I think they're going to share their informations and basically form this Voltron Super Losers unit.
If somebody dies, who's it going to be?
I haven't already guessed these.
But you have new information.
Yeah. I still don't think it's going to be Bill. I know it's not Ben. And to be fair, I know that it's not Eddie or Bev. Mike, I hate to say it, but I feel like his role is complete to get them all here. So narratively, he could be expendable. I like Mike a lot, and I don't want that to happen, but I think that could make sense. That, hey, he got them here, and now he's the sacrifice that has to be made so that they can, like I said, form this Super Losers Voltron unit.
Red Lion, Blue Lion, Black Lion.
I was thinking more Captain Planet. When our powers combine, I'm Captain Planet.
So, unfortunately, I'm going to say, if any of them, it's going to be Mike.
Okay, now on to my favorite thing. Ben, what was your favorite thing this chapter?
Only Ben observing Pennywise and no one noticing the blood shower or the screeching, with Pennywise yelling and shouting. And just everybody going about their business. I like that, like we said, how basically it's Pennywise is picking who his targets are.
My favorite thing was the balloon. I liked the balloon. And I liked that it said things. And the first thing it said was, "Have a good day. Tonight you die." That was pretty fun. And then I liked that it changed. Like, there wasn't a second balloon. There was just a new message on the same balloon. And it said, "I killed Barbara Starrett. Pennywise the clown."
Right.
Like, he signed it.
I like that he put his name on there. That was awesome.
And his title. Mm-hmm. Pennywise the clown, as opposed to Pennywise the barber or Pennywise the taxi driver or
Probably
Pennywise.
Should have put the dancing clown, though, right? I mean, that's his official title.
That's true. Robert Gray.
Bob Gray.
That's right. All right, Luke, what was your favorite thing?
My favorite thing was Ben second-guessing what year it was over and over, kind of this whole deja vu feeling that he's struggling with. And I think the line that Melissa referenced earlier really said it well. Did someone really staple these 2 years together? Like, is there somehow like a transparency layer, of these 2 years in my story going on? Because he's seeing so many exact parallels that it's just disturbing. I like how it affects him. I think it's just really well done. It's well written and very, very interesting.
That wraps us up for this section. You can find us in many, many places. We are on Twitter at floatsdownhere. You can also email us at floatsdownhere@gmail.com. You can find this show and all of our shows, along with a plethora of other information and ways to support the show, at thepodcastthat.com. Subscribe and rate us on iTunes. We really appreciate any ratings you can give us, and we would especially love to hear your comments there. We are now on Instagram, so find us there as well, at floatsdownhere.
Check out our Patreon that we have set up at patreon.com/stayimaginary, and you can find some really cool tiers and rewards that we have for our Patreon viewers, including show notes, exclusive access to our Slack channel, Legion exclusive episodes, and live streams, and a whole bunch of other fun stuff, including a merch club. We have 2 different merchandise clubs that come out every 4 months. So check that out, and we would really appreciate any support you can throw behind us, because we have a lot of fun doing this, and the more people that find out about it, the more fun we can have.
Join us in 2 weeks when we discuss Chapter 11, Walking Tours, Part 2. Eddie Kasprack makes a catch.
You'll float too.
stay imaginary.
Thanks.